Hello, this is Shabbir Ahmed Bashir. I'm the geography optional teacher at Wajiram and Ravi. We have been discussing the mains 2018 geography question paper. We have had series of videos on paper 1 and now we will discuss paper 2. The objective of these videos is not to enrich you on the content which was expected of you to write in examination, but more of a discussion how you can organize and structure your answer and write from the content that you already have. In the hindsight, it's always easy to refer to books and keep adding what all you can write on. But I'm assuming that this paper is written in the exam conditions. So how best can you use whatever you know and have a good answer from which you can expect to score more? So a quick analysis of this year's paper 2. Paper 2 in geography has always been very contemporary in nature. It has always been very applied in terms of its issues and developmental concerns. So more or less, the paper 2 is on the same lines. Not much has changed here. But yes, the questions are now more analytical. They ask you your opinion, they ask your views, not simply explain a given concept, not simply elaborate a given idea. So that ways, this is definitely not the easiest of papers, but a very scoring paper if you have got the concepts right. The map work is always never 100% attemptable. I think partly it is deliberate. Section A, question 1A. So even if you have been able to mark 5 or 6 entries out of 10, but ensuring that the accuracy is good and the write-up is good, I think it should stand you good. So entries like Tawang, Nayyar, Ghatsila, Amarkantak, Shravasti, Shyok River, so these should have been attempted. Whereas maybe Mulshi Lake or Dandeli, if you know, if you are familiar with that, that's another thing. Otherwise, 5 to 6 is what I'm expecting here. Now coming to overall width of the coverage, we can see most questions across 4 areas of paper 2. They've asked questions on agriculture, they've asked questions on water issues, they've asked questions on urban issues and development issues. So if you had done these 4 areas well, I think the paper was entirely solvable. And all the questions are around some contemporary aspect or the other, barring one question which is probably conventional physiography of India, which is discussing the lava plateau and the Chodnagpur plateau. I do not see any other question which is physical geography for that matter. The dust storms also is more of a contemporary issue rather than calling it as a physical geography discussion. So barring one question, that was one, it was question number 2A. Apart from that, all other questions are from the human geography. That was overall analysis of the paper. Now I'm taking up specific questions and what you could have done. The first question I'm discussing is question number 1C. Why setting up of water management boards is a controversial issue in India? Now, this question was always on the cards because a lot of reforms are being suggested, lot of discussions we have already had where we have wanted to constitute the water management institutions in India. So, groundwater board, the surface water board, there has been a Mihir Shah Commission report that talks about merging them into one board. So, this question is very much on the expected lines. But yes, I personally wasn't expecting they would ask you on the boards, but this was a part of a discussion if they had asked you on water management. Now, what could have been discussions here? Now, it's about the controversial issues. Now, even if I leave aside whether you know of the board or not, the controversial issues of water management include basically 4 things. One is, how do we decide on the center state responsibility? How do we decide on who has the primacy on issues on water? Because water continues to be a state subject in India, and the center has been playing a very important role, okay, be it managing the river pollution, we have programs for cleaning the Ganga river, be it conflicts of the river, so interstate disputes, they play a role. A lot of irrigation programs, they definitely take off from the river systems that we have. So the center state issue, the federal issue is a controversy that we have to address, that you should have known and written on. The second issue is when we talk about water management includes managing the quality aspect, pollution aspect, and also includes appropriating water rights to the people who are dependent on water. That is, who should be given how much of water. Now, all our water boards, irrespective of what their mandate has been, they have primarily focused on pollution aspects. So they talk about groundwater contamination, surface water contamination, pollution, but allocation of water according to water rights is still not being addressed. And this is the basis of many of the water conflicts we have in India. So this is a controversial issue. How do we ensure that the scope of the board is proper and they are dealing with the challenges in water management in India? Third controversial issue that you could have talked about is, what about the powers? These boards, until they have some power, some kind of authority to enforce something, to penalize if required, and penalize and also follow it up, many of these remain recommendatory in nature, and they are institutions, but they do not have that active involvement in the resources that they should have involved. So that's another controversial issue. Water dispute itself is a very different issue. These water boards, I mean, for that matter, in India, even the tribunals and Supreme Court hasn't been able to manage all disputes effectively. So what aspect of the conflicts will these boards take up is again a dispute. The points I'm giving you is not based on reading a report on the boards. What I'm trying to tell you here is that such questions can be answered even from the GS content that you have and discussing in relevance to the demands of the question. So that's one. How do you bring in the geographical concept in this? Now, in any water management, three aspects you can use from geography. One is the concept of conjunctive use of surface and groundwater. So yes, it's a good step that the groundwater and the surface water boards and commissions are being merged into one. That is the geographical. The geographical aspect is the watershed development approach. Now, if we are discussing water issues in isolation of the land, forest, agriculture issues, then again the water issues will not be addressed adequately. So while commenting on the controversial aspects of the water boards, this could have been a question that more than water board, we also need some kind of institutions where water issues and their usage is properly integrated into the larger concerns of water use, agriculture, rural rights, drinking water, and so on. Important geographical concept can be water-based planning, river basin planning, okay, to deal with urban issues, to deal with rural issues, and these water boards do not have a clear mandate into discussing rural issues and urban issues in isolation or together. So if you know a bit of geography of the water issues, if you know the current issues in water management, you together can have this as a very good answer. Second question I'm discussing is question 1D. Keeping the recent developments in view, how can energy crisis of India be circumvented by harnessing non-conventional energy resources? Most students probably will end up writing on what is India's energy crisis and what can be the solutions. Or the questions or the answer might gravitate towards what is the importance and significance of the non-conventional energy resources, both of which this question doesn't demand. This is not a general question on what is the energy crisis and not a question in general about what are the advantages of non-conventional energy. This question asks you, keeping the recent development in mind. So you had to have a list of what are the recent developments. And one technique I suggest to all of you, that whenever you have an issue that has many dimensions, many points, it could be many reasons, it could be many perspective, try using schematics here. So what are the recent concerns or developments? If I'm listing down, we have our commitments as a part of Paris deal, environment issues. Recent development includes the oil prices, the way they have been rising. The recent development includes the embargo, okay, or the standoff that US has with Iran, and Iran is a very important supplier of oil in India. The recent issue also includes that India needs to diversify because of its security concerns. So diversification includes even tapping the gas, okay, exporting countries across the world. Recent issues also includes India's thrust on a new economic reform. We're talking about Make in India project. We're talking about growth of manufacturing, diversifying economy towards rural areas. We have a committed, okay, target of 100% rural electrification. So you had to have a list of what are the issues in context of which you will discuss why we need to develop our non-conventional energy resources. I'm not very sure, of course, if you could have added, because the process was on, the recent development includes the problems of rupee getting losing its value. It is consistently falling vis-a-vis the dollar, so that creates problems of payment terms. Okay, so if you could add that also, this was a part of your concern. Keeping this in mind, now tell us why is it important to diversify into non-conventional resources? Now, before you diversify non-conventional resources, you need to know what are the options you have. So I would have suggested you can leave out nuclear energy. Nuclear is more or less conventional now. Now, this is a debate whether solar is conventional or non-conventional. The kind of thrust we have, it seems solar is now becoming conventional, but I'll still maintain it as one of the important upcoming non-conventional. Why? Because solar energy is still not a very big part of our total energy spectrum. Solar, yes, you should have discussed, and shale gas, shale oil resources or options, coal bed methane, both offshore and onshore. Non-conventional also include wind energy where possible. And even if we have not developed much, you can always mention OTEC also, tidal sources also. So a quick list of what all you could have discussed. And then talk about how these are important. Now, three areas of importance is they're important from the environmental issues, the emissions have to be controlled, discussed in context of Paris. Second is from the perspective of diversifying and reaching out to the grassroots level, where solar is very, very important component of energy decentralization. Okay. And third thing you can discuss is from the perspective of security. Security includes our economic security, balance of payment crisis, and also includes our military security, where over-dependence on Middle East can be an issue. So, three parts you integrate together. What are the recent concerns? What are our options on non-conventional energy? And third is talk about why are they important, converse them. You should have had this answer. Not more than 1.5 page across maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs. The third question I can take up is question number 2B. Explain the contemporary agricultural scenario in the context of rapid urbanization in India. Now, what and how is agriculture being impacted in the context of how urban development has happened? Now, this required again some examples from our recent events or say incidences, and relate this with some geographical concept. The geographical concept you could have talked about here is the rural-urban fringe and the process of urban sprawl. The geographical concept you could have talked about is the urban influence in the agriculture crop choices itself and how the cropping patterns have changed. You could have talked about the urban influence on the occupation in the agriculture sector itself. You could have talked about how urban market, urban demand is also influencing some bit of agriculture value addition in the form of agriculture processing, agriculture products, and so on. So, list down what are the areas where agriculture seems to have been impacted. And while discussing the RUF, we have this model of the 5 stages through which the urban fringe transforms. Starting from a village level, it becomes a part of the urban suburbs and the development of edge cities. So, keeping that in mind, this could have been developed. You can discuss both ways. What has been the positive impact of urbanization on agriculture scenario and what has been the negative aspects of urban expansion on agriculture scenario. So positives could include fillip to the agriculture market, like the development of organic agriculture, the thrust on organic products that use less of chemicals, the thrust on value addition, the thrust on developing the rural infrastructure and linking them with the urban areas. These are the positives. The negatives, of course, agriculture cannot keep pace with real estate. Agriculture is losing labor to the urban and industrial sector. The negatives could also include problems of feminization, where the male population migrates out and what happens on the agriculture sector. So this answer could have been discussed under 2 broad heads. One is how agriculture has changed, and second is if the change has been positive or negative. So, and this along with, as I said, the geographical aspect brought in place, also addressed. The next question I'll discuss is examine the ongoing process of agriculture diversification and its implication for food security in India. I think that's a very nicely framed question, because the question is neither on agriculture diversification, what is it, and it's not even on food security. It's about how food security is impacted by, if it is impacted by agriculture diversification. So again, as a part of brainstorming, the first is, do you understand what is agriculture diversification? Diversification would include the range of crops you are encouraging. It also includes the range of non-crops we encourage. It also includes the range of agriculture-based processes that we include. So agriculture diversification is not only about growing more crops, it also includes whether I am adding to the value addition agriculture or not. So agriculture diversification includes agriculture processing sector. Agriculture diversification also includes how agriculture is able to tap the commercial space, the trade options. So diversification is a very broad concept. What is it doing? And the second part of the question is food security. Now, food security, most of us should have known, it is not only about having more food. Food security is not about whether we are growing enough food. Food security operates at 4-5 dimensions. We should have enough food. We should be able to buy the food. We should have the food that is acceptable by our culture, and the food should be assimilated, as in with water, with health issues, and the food also should be such that it takes care of, or the system such that it takes of gender disparities also. So when I discuss the food security, I'm talking about nutritional security, I'm talking about gender security, I'm talking about accessibility of food. We're talking about production self-sufficiency and also agriculture self-reliance. And food security is a long-term thing, which implies that food security should also include discussions on environmental sustainability. If I have enough food for a couple of years and not beyond a certain time, it only means our long-term food security is challenged. So if you have these two pillars first, then you start linking what are we doing. Now, under food security, we have a couple of programs. We have National Food Security Mission. We have the programs for oilseeds. We have programs for maize. We are talking about horticulture. And now tell us how this diversification is helping food security. In discussion, yes, the obvious discussion is we are growing more food. We have more crops and non-crops in our basket. We are diversifying towards fruits, vegetables, milk, and the rest. So in a way, the production self-sufficiency is being addressed. The gap lies in pulses, you can mention that. The gap lies in oil seeds, you can mention that. The gap lies in nutritional aspects, which is being covered through fruits probably and vegetables probably under horticulture. But where agriculture diversification cannot help food security is the agriculture diversification is yet to impact the farmers who are poor. Without livelihood security, without the capacity of the farmers to buy the food, your diversification cannot result in food security of the country. So the objective of doubling the farmer income by 2022 is a very important component. The food security diversification does not necessarily mean the gender rights are addressed, does not necessarily mean the food requirements of the critical age group, adolescence, childhood, infancy is addressed. So your answer will have three parts. In the first part, you explain, maybe through schematics, what are the components of the two concepts and how they are related. In the second part, accept the fact, yes, we are diversifying, production has increased. And the third part, you have to say that agriculture diversification on its own will not ensure all aspects of food security. So that was question 3A, and I think it's a very good question. With schematics discussions, you could have done well in this. In fact, if you have space, you could have also added one more aspect. The agriculture diversification along with agriculture resilience is important for food security. When I say agriculture resilience, it is the capacity of the agriculture system and the ecosystem to bear and manage the problems of climate change, problems of disasters, recurrent floods and droughts. Unless all of this is handled under diversification, food security in India will still elude us for a long time. So a good question, worth probably writing across 3 pages and more maybe. Okay, now we have discussed and analyzed the question paper on the whole, and plus insights into how you could have answered the initial couple of questions that require a bit of integration. Please keep watching the videos to follow, where I'll discuss some other questions which are of a different type and they need a different treatment. Thank you.